The introduction's always the worst.
I know. All right. Hello and welcome to Backstreet's Back Whatever, a podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jacob.
I'm Taylor.
So if you've never heard this podcast before, this podcast is basically a Backstreet Boys podcast. I, Jacob, have little to no knowledge. Well, not anymore.
Can't say that.
I'm starting to get knowledge about the Backstreet Boys, but if you jump to the first episode, I know little to nothing. And then Taylor is an avid Backstreet Boys fan.
We should do for you, Jacob, like what they do in Men in Black, where we just wipe just the Backstreet Boys knowledge, not like all of your memories, but just wipe what you know of them before every episode, so it's almost like it's brand new information to you, because now you know so much that I think you love them.
I think there is something for that. It's called alcohol. Yeah. So Taylor, anything new happening with you this week?
Oh my god. So we literally recorded episode 4 and 5 back to back. So the same exact thing that happened to me in episode 4 is exactly what's happened to me now. I guess no. You know what? There is a new development between the last recording and this one. I talked to my good friend Natalie, who gave us kudos on episode 3. She enjoyed it very much, and she thinks we're now into our groove of things. So that's the latest update I have. What about you, Jacob?
I have nothing.
I just want to let everybody know that in episode 4, none of the Backstreet Boys have followed us, and I just want to let you know that in the last hour or so, they still have not followed us, and I'm very upset about it.
Yeah.
So come episode 6, I'm going to make that shit happen.
Yeah, they say a lot can happen in an hour except for us.
That's true.
Nothing happens in an hour.
Nothing happens. This is the episode I am the most excited for. I am so excited for this. Can I tell you why, Jacob?
Sure.
Because, okay, so, we try to get an idea of the episode that we're going to do a couple episodes in, right? And so Jacob was very kind, and I said I would love if we could watch the documentary showing what you're made of, the Backstreet Boys one, together, and that could be our next episode. And then he said okay, and that was it. And I then brought the documentary, and he watched it on the same day I brought it, and I'm so excited about that. I'm thrilled to hear every single opinion that Jacob has about this, what I thought was glorious documentary.
Yeah.
It's the best.
I'm excited too. I'll be honest. When I watched it,
wait. What were your thoughts before you watched it?
I was about to say.
Okay, sorry.
That.
Very sorry.
So before I was going to watch it, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to watch this. And then as I was watching it, I was really into it because it was good. And then at the end of it, I was like, wow, that was a really good documentary. And then after reflecting on it for a couple hours, that documentary was terrible.
What?
It was so bad. I'm ready to rip this documentary a new old hole. You
are a liar. You are such a liar. I saw your text message that you sent to me that said, this stupid documentary is freaking beautiful. And that was
while I was still watching it.
You know what? How is it that when you're watching it, you had the thought that it was garbage? Then while you're watching it, you don't think it's garbage. And then a couple hours later, you go back to thinking it's garbage. How does that happen? I think, you know what I think? Before you rip it, whatever your stupid opinions are of it,
yes.
What I think is that you got into the magic that is the Backstreet Boys, and as I did when I cried on their freaking cruise, you were like, oh, I actually really like this. And then the other part of you was like, stop, Jacob, stop with your logic of liking them. You're supposed to hate them. And you shut it down. So I don't believe anything that you're saying about how horrible it is. I think you really love it. But go on. Where would you like to start? You know what? Hold on. Before you... so I will give the premise to our listeners who may not have watched it. Just a quick overview. So if you have never heard of or seen or even know about that there's a documentary that the Backstreet Boys did about 4 years ago that's called Show 'Em What You're Made Of. The title is named after one of their songs from In a World Like This album. So if you have never heard or seen of it, it's basically the Backstreet Boys have done this documentary. Kevin has now come back to the group, so it's all 5 of them. It's their 20th year anniversary, and they want to do a tour, and they're releasing an album, and they're doing behind the scenes and recording an album, and they're doing all this on their own. And while they're in the midst of recording this album, they are also giving you kind of a sneak peek into their lives, and each one of them does a part where they go back to their hometown, and they go back to someone who's like a hometown hero to them. So it's not that they go back to their families or anything, but they go back to a piece of their life that meant something. So that's the summary of it.
Real quick, what was the name of that album that they're recording during the time of this documentary?
In a World Like This.
Okay, I don't think that was ever mentioned until the very end.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I don't think they picked the title until the end of it.
Oh, God. Okay.
You know what?
What is it called? In a World Like This?
Yes.
And when did that one come out?
Oh, I want to say it was like 2018, 2012.
2018 is this year.
Yeah.
It came out this year?
Like, no, like 2014. 2014 or something like that.
The
I
album
never
came out?
Google, but I might have to Google it. But it's like 4 years ago. Yeah, so like 2014.
Okay. When did this documentary come out?
Yes, it was 2014 because if it was their 20th anniversary and they started in 1994, it was 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're working on the
math,
tour.
Everyone.
So they're working on the recording and also the tour for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 2 projects that are going on at the same time.
Yes.
What's the tour called? Is it also called In a World Like This Tour?
In a World Like This World Tour.
IAWLT Tour.
That's right. That's right.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah. Well,
Really?
I mean, like, they abbreviated it, but yes, the long version was In a World Like This Tour.
I am not going to say that. That's hard to say. Okay. Nice. Yeah, so you said that they go back and go to their hometowns, which was really nice. You got to see the first person they did was Kevin. Mm-hmm. And they went back to Kentucky.
Yes.
And he grew up, seems like on some type of like camp, like a Christian camp type thing that his parents ran, right?
Yes.
Is that really wrong?
No.
Or is that really right?
No, I think you're actually really right because they had like a church there. It was like some like campground.
Right.
That, he was at. Yeah. Because they were talking about how in the wintertime it was very quiet and secluded. Right.
And there is something that I didn't even expect. It gets really emotional right within like the first like 5 minutes after all the montage for the intro. Mm-hmm. Like within the first 5 minutes with Kevin, it gets really emotional because he talks about the passing of his dad when he was younger. That happened there, and I think that happened. It sounded like it happened in between while he was doing stuff in Orlando. And then, he came back, and then went back to Orlando after his dad passed. I think.
Yeah, basically like I think it was before the Backstreet Boys, but while he was trying to get his foot on the ground, his dad had passed. And Kevin is very sensitive soul. I mean, he's a very easy crier. There was many jokes like on the cruise time about how like it's easy for Kevin to cry, and that's so true. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like Nick I should say, when Nick's part came up and he cried, like, that's a rarity. But for Kevin, that's something you see often. But it was still a very emotional scene, though, for sure. Him talking about his dad passing.
Right. Yeah. That was, yeah.
What,
So one of the things they talk about, so Kevin was gone for 2 albums, right?
Yeah, he was gone for 2 albums.
And when did he leave?
So he left after they did their album Never Gone.
Hold on. I'm just writing stuff down as we go, just so I can remember. So Kevin left.
So Kevin left after they did the album Never Gone. I just got the irony. I just got it.
And when did that come out? What year did that come out?
I want to say
2005 or 6, right? Didn't he say that he left around then?
Yeah, I think it was 2005. And he wanted to go do, honestly, like, he was sick of the Backstreet Boys and he wanted to do an acting career. Like, he really wanted to be an actor. And he did
which they never said in the documentary.
That's true, but that's what really happened. He was sick, but he did say he was sick of the boy band stuff.
They did say that, but they never said what he pursued to do.
Well, you know why? Because I'm sorry, because he wasn't good at it. Or right. I should say he wasn't good at it, but what he picked were horrible choices. With the exception, he did a stint on the not on Broadway, but off Broadway version of Chicago. So he did a stint doing a performance in Chicago. I don't remember the character's name. And then he did these 2 movies that, oh my God, were just so horrible. And again, it wasn't his acting that was horrible, but the movies were garbage.
Which ones were those? I
think it was called, one of them was called, like, not The Breakfast Club, but like something along those, The Breakfast something. And I tried to, and it was on Netflix, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch it.
Is it a Netflix movie?
It's not a Netflix movie. This was before Netflix like made their own movies, but it was on Netflix, and I wanted to watch it I watched, I think, the first 20 minutes of it, and it was like weirdly sexual. It was about like these like 50s or 60s like husband and wife couples, like 3 different couples. And they seemed to be like into each other, and I don't know what the premise of it was. It was so bizarre, and I couldn't watch past 20 minutes of it. I'm like, I'm good. This is garbage. And then some other movie, I can't even tell you what the name was. And I really wanted to like them because Kevin was in them, but I just couldn't. So I don't know if it was. I don't think that his acting was bad. I think the movies were bad. So I never saw him in Chicago, so I don't know how it was, but I know it was, the stint was very good during his time on there, but I don't think his acting career panned out the way he wanted it to, and maybe he felt like he could give this another shot, and maybe that's why he came back, or maybe he was like, what was I thinking?
And when did he come back?
He came back 7 years after he left.
So 2012?
Yeah.
So here's my first problem with the documentary. It says he left. It didn't say what he did in that time.
Yeah.
It didn't say when he came back. It didn't say why he came back.
That's fair.
So it was a lot of unanswered stuff. It was like, oh, you left, but why did you come back? What made you come back? What did you do in that time?
Yeah. I could see why. You know what? That's actually I will say that's a very respectful reason why you didn't like it. Like, you're not just saying like, oh, this is cheesy shit and I didn't like it. But no, that's
I didn't think it was cheesy at all. I thought it was really honest and beautiful and very touching. The reason I said I was going to rip it a new hole is because there were a lot of things left unanswered.
Oh, okay. You know what? That's actually fair. Okay. Before you get into all the things you didn't like, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What were the top 3?
No, you can't.
Ha
no,
ha.
I'm just kidding.
Ha. Now
Yes,
I'm asking you the question, Jacob. What were the top 3 things that surprised you when you watched this documentary? In any way that it was surprising to you?
Okay. The top 3 things that were surprising to me. Mm-hmm. Well, there was the scene where they're in the room with their producers and
record execs, I'm sure. Yeah.
And probably tour managers, because I think they're talking about the time limit for that.
Yeah.
And they're going over the songs. And then it ends up just being a back and forth between Brian and Nick saying, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. Back and forth between it. And it's like a long thing, and it's like a really heated thing. And it was like, I guess like all groups, bands probably get into something like that, but it's kind of surprising to feel like the Backstreet Boys would get that heated with that type of language. I don't know.
I know. I think it's like Nick is an angry boy to begin with. Yeah. Like, you could kind of tell that Nick has a lot of like pent up anger.
Sure.
And so I think that it's like, oh, Nick got so angry, like, oh, that's shocking. But I was surprised even as a knower of them, that him and Brian, or at least he had this animosity with Brian when he said, I'm not afraid of you anymore. And I was like, when were you fucking afraid of Brian? I'm sorry, but out of all the people you're afraid of, Brian is the one that you're scared of? Like, what is that about?
That was another thing that I wrote down in my questions that I wanted to bring up, which we can do now if you want.
No, you can ask me. Well, yeah, ask me now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess if you don't know, then I don't know.
The only thing that
because they bring that up, and then again, it's never answered. It never goes in depth.
I would have loved to have known exactly what Nick was afraid of Brian about. And then there was a part of me that I was like, there was one part of me that was wondering, like, were you just saying that to make it dramatic for the documentary? And the other part of me was like, I don't think that was fake. I think that was really what he meant when he said it. But why he said that, I don't know. Like, I was like, when were you scared of Brian? Like, I would have been, honestly speaking, like, if I were Nick, I would have been scared of Kevin, because Kevin's the oldest, and he's very serious, and he's like, I don't take shit from anybody. Or AJ, because AJ's a wild card.
Right.
I mean, I would have, if he said that to Howie, I would have definitely been shocked, and I would be like, you're full of shit. But Brian,
maybe Howie's just like the nice guy who is secretly crazy. Maybe AJ is the most predictable person, and Howie is the wildest of them all.
That's true. But I was like, where does Brian come from? Maybe because maybe Brian doesn't like. I was picturing this in my mind, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, was like Brian condescending to you? Like, was he like? I just couldn't picture where that was coming from. I was like, if you're scared of anyone, be scared of Kevin. And here's why. Because Kevin would be like, you do this or I'm leaving the group, and then say they don't do it, and he's like, bitch, I'm leaving, and then he leaves. Like, he could, be there, he could affect their wallets, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, and also because he's the oldest and he seems like he doesn't take shit from anybody. But I was like, that's the one that I would be scared of. What did Brian do that you could be scared? Like, it just, I couldn't understand that. And flipping that over, I'm like, if anything, I bet Brian's scared of Nick more, or they're all probably scared of Nick because he's got some anger issues, clearly. And then Kevin was like trying to alleviate that fight, which I thought was in a very diplomatic way.
It was. I like that.
Yeah.
I like Kevin a lot.
I do. I love Kevin. Like, seeing the documentary, like, really made me love Kevin more.
Yeah.
And having so much respect for him. But anyway, so that was one of the top three things that you were surprised by. What was the second thing?
The second thing was at the end of the movie, it said, executive producers, the Backstreet Boys. And I was like, wow. I mean, it would make sense that they would show those, like, sensitive, like, intense, emotional sides, but not those, like, to leave that heated argument when they could have just, like, because they're producing it, they could have taken it out, Just the way that we edit stuff and like, we take out of the.
We take our fighting out of all of our podcasts. No one ever knows we yell at each other.
Right, and all your racial slurs we take out. But, if somebody else was producing it, they would say, no, you got to leave in those racial slurs that Taylor's always using against you, Jacob, and other minorities. That doesn't really happen. Just so you know. In case you didn't know, that was a joke, listeners. Sorry, listeners. Okay, listeners. Back to the whatever. But the fact that was a decision where they could have easily just like taken out that moment, but they decided to leave it.
Yeah.
I thought that was surprising. What was my 3 surprising parts or favorite parts?
Yeah, those 2, and then you have to say one more, third and final. So you gotta make it count.
The third one was, Nick, when they go to Nick's place and he's like talking about his family and all that, and how he's estranged from his parents. I think he said he hadn't seen him in like either 5 or 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that he didn't mention Aaron at all. What a terrible brother he is. Could have at least, for all of us who have watched the documentary just to see what was up with Aaron.
That's true. There was not one mention of Aaron Carter in any of that.
Not once.
But can I also point out the obvious that I was surprised by? That there's not one mention of any wife in there. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but they really just wanted to make sure that it was just about them.
Yeah, well, it's the Backstreet Boys, not the Backstreet Wives documentary.
I would watch that, though.
The Backstreet Wives documentary.
I totally would. I'd pay and watch that, for sure. Because that's where the really good stuff is. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
There'd be some good stuff in that documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably would really watch that for sure.
Yeah. See?
Is Aaron married?
No, he's not.
No.
He's as of today, on September 23rd. He's in a relationship. I say that because he is like in and out of relationships like no one's business. Mm-hmm. And he last year, I don't know. I want to make sure I say this as appropriately as I can, but I can't trust anything that Aaron says about his life because everything that he says is meant for headlines. For example, last year he's like, "Oh, I'm bisexual, and now I like guys." And I'm not saying that he needs to date a guy to prove to us that he is, but he's also like, and I've been anorexic, and I'm filing for bankruptcy. So he does like these decorative statements about his life that I don't even know are true or not, and don't always like seem to follow up with anything. So I say that like right now he's dating a gal that I think she is like, I don't know what she does. I think she does like bags and is a tattoo artist. I think something like that. Mm. But he does like these big grandiose announcements, and you don't know if it's just for attention or if they're real, which I would hope would be more sincere.
Is Aaron Carter actually Machine Gun Kelly? Because he looks like Machine Gun Kelly.
God, why wouldn't he just say he's Machine Gun Kelly then?
And I feel like Aaron...
He should just say that.
I feel like Aaron Carter would be stupid enough to put out an Eminem diss track.
Oh my God, he should. That's because you've been like watching, like listening to this for the last week because I've seen your Instagram post.
Yeah. Maybe he was like, okay, I'm gonna make a diss track against Eminem, but I'll call myself Machine Gun Kelly. And if it goes over bad, I can just crawl away and be Aaron Carter. But if it goes over good, then I can be like, hey, actually, I'm Aaron Carter. Machine Gun Kelly is just my alias. It's actually Machine Gun Carter.
There you go.
Just a thought.
I don't think that's a bad thought, and I think if Aaron Carter ever listens to this episode, he really needs to jump in on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. But yeah, no, Aaron was not mentioned at all in that documentary.
Yeah.
They left him out.
I would like to see a tour that would be Aaron Carter, Machine Gun Kelly, and then maybe Yellow Wolf. They all look like the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I know eventually we'll do an Aaron Carter episode, so I don't want to say too much about this, but I will say his new music sounds a little bit Justin Bieber-ish. So also another inspired, similar influence, looks and stuff.
Nice. Should we go back to the documentary?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. So, Brian. Let's talk about Brian.
Oh.
Do you want to finish up with...
No.
Did you have something to say about Kevin before we moved on to Brian?
No, I want to ask you, does your feelings about Brian change after seeing this documentary? And then you can get into Brian.
No.
I thought you would have maybe liked him a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. I do like him a little bit more. But
Okay.
I still feel the same way about him.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I thought you would have had, your heart would have gone out a little bit to him more because of his struggles with his vocal ability, which that should have been surprising because you didn't know anything about that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. But go ahead. Go on with your thoughts about Brian.
So the first thing I want to touch on about Brian, so one of the big things was his voice, and how, as he's getting older, the muscles around his vocal cords are tightening, and so that's changing a lot of how his, how his voice sounds, and it's part of it's even brought up in that heated argument between Nick and Brian, in that office scene. But yeah, I mean, they show him with his like vocal therapist, working on stuff, and they touch on it, but they never end up saying what happened with it, if it got resolved. Like nothing is ever explained.
Yeah,
and that's one of the other things that I had a problem with, was they brought it up, but they never explained like the outcome. They were just like, oh, here's this problem, and now we're not going to tell you how it gets resolved.
I think it's still a work in progress, because when I hear him live, I could tell that he uses his vocals differently than how he used them before. So I think it's still an ongoing issue. But the other thing was, because I want to ask your opinion of this, when you brought up that fight between Nick and Brian, do you feel like Nick said that specifically to hurt Brian because he knew that that was Brian's Achilles heel? You know what I'm saying? Like when they were yelling at each other, and then Nick was like, you know what? That's why people tell me when you're editing your songs that they need to change this or change that, and everybody knows that vocally you're not doing good. Like, do you think that he was either being honest and just stating like the elephant in the room, or do you think he was doing that to deliberately hurt Brian because he was hurt? Because that's what I wondered.
Well, here's the thing. The argument started because whether they liked the way the lyrics for a certain song on the chorus. And, they were like, Nick was like, I really like it, and Brian was like, I don't like it. And it was just like a back and forth. And I think it wasn't really to hurt him, but I think it was like, I think it got to the point where for both parties involved, it was like, all right, well, if we're going to go there, how about this?
Yeah.
Like, it got heated to that point where it was just like, well, if all this stuff is coming out, now this. Now I'm going to bring up this if we're just getting it out all. I don't think it was like to hurt him. I think it was just based on the fact that, they were in that moment and they were just getting really frustrated, and they were each starting to say other things that they were upset about, which maybe they had held in and maybe definitely should not have come out at that moment and should have been saved for later, and they should have just focused on that song.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. But I think it's just that came out because it was just like, yeah, well, we're all mad, so this is why I'm mad. Here's my laundry list.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I mean, it would have been interesting to hear what the other Backstreet Boys thoughts were on Brian's voice, about how they felt about it, what their concerns and fears, but they never did that.
I think Kevin was like the one who was the speaker for the group, and it kind of sounds like.
Oh, I didn't mean like in that meeting. I meant like outside of it.
Oh, outside of it.
I meant like while they were doing Brian's part.
Oh yeah.
Because that conference room thing didn't show up until later.
Yeah.
Brian was like the second person after Kevin that they visited. I meant like during Brian's thing.
Oh, I see.
If they had like interviewed.
Yeah.
What are those called? I think they're called confessionals.
Yeah, there's definitely no confessionals.
Yeah.
For any of those, which I thought was interesting.
Right.
I guess I would have felt a little like Real Housewives, Real World type of thing.
Right.
But
well, there's confessionals for the boys that are during their thing, but there's not like a different perspective on the situation.
That would have been nice. Yeah, that would have been nice to hear. I wonder if they did that and it would have made it longer, so they decided not to do that.
Yeah. Could have been. Well, maybe not. I mean,
they should have though. I think it would.
Because I feel like to cut out all of them, maybe just a couple, it would have been like. But to just be like, no, we're just gonna get rid of all of them. I feel like I don't know.
I don't want to skip ahead to Kevin. I could wait till we talk about Kevin.
Already did Kevin, remember?
Oh, did we? Oh, that was you. Okay, so here's my thing about Kevin.
That's it. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was it. Poor Kevin doesn't get enough time. What I thought was interesting about the Kevin thing that I would have liked to have known more about is that so Brian and Kevin are cousins, right?
Yeah.
Going back to what you just said about like the confessionals and things like that. When Kevin talked about his dad, it would have been nice to hear Brian's take on that because that was Brian's uncle, and there's no opinion anywhere about Brian's thoughts.
Right,
on
that
his
was the
uncle
other
passing. That
was the first thing when it started. I was like, aren't they related? How come they're not asking Brian? And like,
yeah.
And when Kevin's crying, I think it's Howie.
It's Howie that hugs him. And not Brian.
And that's why I was like...
I thought it was Brian at first. And then when I saw it again, I was like, no, that's Howie. And Brian's just sitting there, like, really quiet. Which goes back to my conspiracy theory. Are Kevin and Brian really cousins? Because I want somebody to show me a freaking photo of them as kids. That's all I'm saying. I don't think they're really cousins. That's my conspiracy theory. And I'm standing by it because I have seen no photo proof that they are actually cousins.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because wouldn't family be the first one to hug you when you're crying about your parent instead of Howie?
I agree.
I wouldn't mind if Howie hugged me though.
Huh?
I wouldn't mind if Howie hugged me though.
Oh, I mean, yes, if Howie hugs you, you're going to take the hug. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But for sure, I was surprised that Brian didn't even chime in during that time or acknowledge anything about Kevin, being sad or what was Kevin going through during that time. Something. So it just made me wonder, to go back to my conspiracy theory, that Brian and Kevin are not really related because... Maybe, I just don't think they are.
Right.
Sorry, I've blown the lid off of that one.
Okay, so we have AJ, Howie, and Nick.
Yes.
Actually, let's do this.
Yeah.
So we have AJ, Howie, and Nick left.
Mm-hmm.
So, marry, bone, kill.
I'm sorry.
Who would you marry?
Okay.
Who would you bone?
Ooh.
And who are you going to kill?
Of the three of those?
Of AJ, Nick, and Howie.
Oh, okay. I already know the answer.
And then we'll go in that order.
Is it just...
who should be the order? Should it be the person that you kill, we'll do them first, and then Bone second, and then third Mary, or should we do it the other way?
No, we could do that. That's fine. Because they're going to die, so they should at least...
Can I guess?
Okay, yes, you guess.
All right, you are going to marry Nick.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to bone AJ, and you're going to kill Howie.
No, so I'm gonna kill Howie for sure.
Okay, and you're going to bone Nick?
I'm going to bone Nick and marry AJ.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Twist.
That is a twist.
What about you, Jacob?
What?
No?
Let's see. I think I would...
Okay, I'm going to guess. Can I guess?
I have to figure it out first.
Okay.
Maybe let's do that last.
Okay.
That'll be at the end of the episode. We'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, so, should we do AJ and then Nick and then Howie?
I killed Howie, so he can go next.
Okay, we'll talk about Howie.
Do you want to save Howie for last?
No, we'll do Howie now, actually, because I don't have much on Howie.
Because he was boring?
Yeah. Howie's whole thing was just him, because what they did was they talked...
Him killing rabbits, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, we see Howie's childhood home. Here's my thing. I know that you love Howie and that he's your favorite. And I get why he's your favorite. He's my least favorite because of how boring he is. And this documentary made a point of how boring he was. And
sure.
I was like, not that I'm saying he needed to get into drugs or to fight with anybody, but it would have been so good if Howie gave a shut the fuck up to Nick. If Howie would have told Nick to shut the fuck up, I would have been like, yes, you are my favorite now. Good for you. Like, he was so boring. And I'm like, God, if the only thing that you're complaining about is that you didn't get lead vocals, like, your life is pretty good.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Because remember, you said when they first started out, I think you said Howie and Kevin were kind of like the leads.
Yeah.
When they were kind of doing like the R&B, but then when they switched over to the pop, it became Brian and Nick.
Yes.
And so I think at what?
And AJ, yeah.
Yeah. And then I think at one point during the thing when they're recording, Howie yells something that says he does all the lead vocals on this album. Mm-hmm. And that,
out the window? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was for In a World Like This.
Mm-hmm.
Howie does the...
He does not do the lead vocals.
Because I think he does say that.
Yeah, he says that, but he does more lead vocals than he's ever done before. Okay. So I will say... Now, here's the thing.
I got a question. How well did that album do? Actually, I think at the end of the documentary, it said it did really well.
It did better than the last two albums without Kevin. Yeah. But I don't think it's been one of their best albums. Like Millennium is for sure the number one album. Sure. But I think that it did better than the albums before Kevin for sure.
Gotcha.
And here's the other thing though is, how do I put this? Do I want to say that did Howie have more lead vocals because he wanted that? Or did Howie get more lead vocals because Brian's voice wasn't up to par? Because maybe that's why he got more lead vocals. It's kind of hard when you're hearing how Brian is struggling with his voice and then Howie's saying, I have more leads. I'm like, yeah, at Brian's expense. That's how that happened. Yeah. So that's kind of like my argument with that. Not that all their voices are great. It's not that I don't like any of their voices, but I'm very sorry. And one day, if Howie hears this, I'm sorry, but it's kind of boring. I feel like vocally, it's kind of the same. I just don't feel that excited.
Right. So for all of our boring listeners, you need to start getting into fights, bar fights, or drugs in order to be not boring. I think that's the thing we can take away from episode 5.
I didn't say that Howie wasn't a good person. I was just saying that if you're watching the documentary and you kind of hear all of the trials and tribulations. Okay, let me even go back further. We're talking about 20 years of their lives. And you're telling me that the hardest thing that Howie had to go through was that he didn't get lead vocals out of 20 years of a career? This doesn't make any sense to me. Think about it. Brian's lost his voice. Kevin lost his dad. AJ struggled with drugs and alcohol. Nick fought with his family and clearly has some issues with Brian. And Howie is just totally fine. He better have some crazy shit going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, and that better be it. Because, again, I was just kind of shocked that I'm like, well, okay, so let's hear what Howie has to say. Nope. Nothing.
Yeah, Howie's great. Freaking love Howie, man.
I'm just saying, if there was a reality show, okay, if Howie had to do a reality show, that would be on, like, TLC. It would be like some type of show where he like gets to rehab houses, because I can't imagine any reality show that I would watch with him in it that wasn't like some type of home and gardens type of project. That's all.
Nice.
Sorry.
I probably won't watch that.
See? That's my point.
All right, so moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas, Aaron's brother. So,
what were your thoughts?
You know what? Here's the thing. When you asked me if I liked Brian more, whatever. I appreciated his voice more.
Oh, interesting.
You know, because there were some of those really good, candid, like a cappella moments.
Yeah.
Like I think when they're like, they look like choir boys, and they're like in a stairwell.
Yes.
Did they ever do like an a cappella album?
No, but they did do they didn't do an album a cappella.
Those fools! Oh my god!
I know, they really need to jump on that.
They should have done it back then.
I know, but they did do a concert, quote unquote, that was very similar to like MTV Unplugged, which is by far one of my favorite videos of all time. Yeah, it really is, and it's called A Night Out with the Backstreet Boys, and it's all of them in a very MTV Unplugged setting, where they sang a bunch of their songs like a cappella with very minimal instruments, and it's gorgeous.
Nice.
Gorgeous.
I'd watch that. But I like the more stuff when they were coming up and they were just like singing in the in the stairwells and at the gymnasiums and in the like school parking lots.
It was really cool to see that. It was, because a lot of people don't really, what I really do love about them is I do find them to be incredibly talented. Vocally, they have a great range.
Yeah.
And when you get
Brian's
to hear
voice
that,
is amazing, though.
it really is. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I got to hear him live, like at the peak of his voice. And it really is disappointing when you hear that he has these struggles, because his talent is really gifted. I really do believe that. And so it's great to hear them. When you've heard them live, it's amazing. But when you do hear them perform, they never lip sync or anything like that.
Right.
It's all, what you see is what you get. So it's they're not just a boy band, but they do have this talent behind them that I think is good.
Right. But yeah, so going back, so when you asked me if I saw Brian in a more likable light, I mean, Nick, though, because I don't really care for Nick.
No, you don't.
I did really like Nick in this because he cried a lot. Yeah,
because of the cursing and the fighting? No, because
of the crying.
Oh, really?
I was like, oh, I like this baby.
Oh my god, I like this baby.
Yeah. It was really nice.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that. Okay.
Why?
Why? Because you thought, is it because you thought that Nick was, tough and he didn't have emotions? Or because, I'm just curious.
Not tough, maybe more, soulless.
Oh, my God.
Not I'm a tough guy. More I have no soul type of guy.
Interesting. No, I mean, I think that when I think of Nick, and, as you know, Nick is my favorite. Right. But I find Nick to be an angsty 13-year-old boy. Yeah. And I'm not, and let me be very clear, I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that because his parents were so shitty
Right.
That, and they really were. And they really, well, not his dad. His dad is passed, but his mom is still alive. But, like, she, they did such a shitty job to him that it has made him this angsty, emotional person. Yeah. And I do feel bad for him because he did, like, grow up very poor. Like, not like a trailer park, but very similar. Like, his mom managed him for a little bit, but then wanted to take all of his money. She managed Aaron and did the same thing with Aaron. Yeah. So when I see how Aaron Carter is and, like, how angry Nick gets, like, I could tell that's because of his parents. So I do feel bad for that. Mm. And then it's kind of nice now that he has a son and you see how much he's just in love with his son, that you're like, oh, I'm so glad that you had that for yourself because you obviously really needed that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know that about.
In depth there.
Oh no, I didn't know about that. That background for them, for the Carter boys.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting to see them in more of like a, in that type of light.
Yeah.
Instead of just like the, boy band celebrity type thing.
Yeah.
Were
you, before we talk about the other ones, what was your thought?
We only got one more left.
Huh?
We only got one more left.
Oh, that's right. What was your thought on the background footage of NSYNC and Lou Pearlman as a whole? Like, all that information. What did you think about that?
Oh, God. You know what? They talked so much about how they loved Lou Pearlman. I can't believe they didn't, like, watch their own footage without being like, wow, what a creep this guy was that we were around the entire time and that we looked up to.
Yeah.
We looked up to a literal, like, piece of, like, garbage. Like, because they talk about him like, they're like, I mean, especially because Kevin, lost his father, so he kind of had a father figure in Lou. But, like, the part where they're like, oh, yeah, we went over, like, I think they were like, well, Nick was the youngest. He was like 14 or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember we were going, and I think it was Howie was like, oh,
yes,
yeah, we were going over to Lou's house, and, he had a porno, and that was the first time I ever watched, like a...
Two girls kissing.
Yeah, two girls kissing.
Yeah. No, he's a sleazeball and definitely a pedophile. Like, let's just call that out. I mean, he's dead now, so, like, it's not going to ruin his image. But, no, he's so creepy and so pedophile-like. Now, when he, there was talk whether I think it was either before he passed or when he went to jail or after he passed, but around that time frame, when there was reports saying that he molested the boys that he managed from, like, NSYNC to, like, O-Town and Backstreet Boys, and the Backstreet Boys said that, no, like, while he was a lot of bad things, he never touched any of us inappropriately. Now, that doesn't mean that he was inappropriate. Obviously, like, if you have a 14-year-old boy there, just even isolate, like, everybody else is of age but Nick, right? So you have Nick there who's 14, 15 years old, and you have pornos. Like, you are in some bad territory. That's not right. I don't care who you are. Like, that's just gross and sick to me. And I just wonder if that has been something that's affected Nick because of that. Whether he knows that or not.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, that guy was... God.
He looks sleazy. I'm sorry. He looks like the Ghostbuster, like, white ghost man. That's how, like, just, I don't know. I just think he's so gross and slimy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so weird because they were just like, they talk so fondly of him. Mm-hmm. And then you see, like, clips or pictures of him, like, with him, like, with his arms around them, and it's like, really? This guy?
Yes!
Really?
I know!
Really? Really?
But can we just talk about, okay, so...
Wasn't their paycheck, their first paycheck was for, like, $74, right?
Yeah, $75. But let's talk about the parents of the Backstreet Boys, who are, so, I think it's like Kevin and Howie are of legal age, right? Yeah. And maybe, no, not AJ. So AJ and Nick are for sure underage at this point. If I am one of their parents, obviously we know Nick's parents don't know how to do a good job, but if I'm AJ's mom and I've met Lou Pearlman, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, do you sure want to do this? I think I'm going to have to be with you for most of this, or all of it. I don't really know. Let's not do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that either the parents didn't care or had bad judgment or
something.
were just in a position where they had to just subject their kids to the company of a total creep. Because otherwise we wouldn't have the Backstreet Boys.
That's true. That is very true. But also think of like the narrative of, so this fat white rich man wants to take boys around the world on his dime in his private jet and invite them to his private home, and he wants to make sure they're taken care of at all times. Like just break that down, just like that. And I'm like, oh, that is gross. That is so gross.
Yeah. Don't
do that. Don't sign up for that. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're wrong, but,
right.
Not totally. Still there.
Okay, so now the last one.
Yeah.
AJ. So AJ's big thing was that he was in rehab because, he just started to have, like, problems with alcohol and drugs, specifically cocaine.
Yeah.
And, just being that kind of rebellious Backstreet Boy and just kind of trying to create an image that stood out and, having to be in a boy band but trying to be able to control some aspect. I think really got out of control.
Yeah.
For him. But yeah, so it says that, like, in the documentary it says that Kevin, came by and was just like, Kevin was the main reason that he went in to rehab because Kevin said, "You're dead to me."
Yeah.
To AJ when he was like on a 3-day coke binge or something.
This is why Kevin would be the scariest to me. Again.
What year did AJ go into rehab?
Oh, God, that had to have been during the Black and Blue tour. And that was 2001, 2002.
And then, when his ultimate... How many times did he go in and out of rehab?
I know about 2 times that he went to rehab. And from what I read recently, he is sober right now and has been for like several years. Yeah. So there is that. But I think it's, at least to my knowledge, at least 2 times.
Yeah. They never go that in depth about it, which is fine. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, but they didn't answer a lot of other things from the documentary. Like that whole thing with Kevin coming back, or why he left, or what he did. Well, they explained why he left, but not what he was doing and all that stuff. So, kind of wish they had went more in depth about the rehab, even though that's not necessary. It would have been more interesting, a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think that if you had to look at anybody whose struggles seem to be the hardest, I thought we got to see a lot of Brian, which I was surprised about. Like, we got to see him doing the vocal training and things like that. And it kind of, I don't know, like, to go back to what you were saying, like, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of, like, I'm not saying we had to necessarily see AJ go to an AA meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
But to talk about how he is doing with his sobriety, because I do agree, like, everything that they did, they touched on, but I wanted more.
Right.
I really did. And I mean, I guess that is a good attribute to their documentary, that you wanted to know more.
Sure. Yeah.
But it would have been nice if they could have given that.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and they probably showed Brian's the most, mainly because his, in that moment, affected everybody more so than everybody else's problems.
Yeah. Did you find Nick to refer to Brian as the Michael Jordan of the group? Did you find that to be true or egotistical?
No. I mean, after seeing those older clips of Brian singing, I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. I would have thought that Nick would have said he was Michael Jordan and that Brian was Scottie Pippen. But when he made that analogy saying that Brian was the Michael Jordan, I was like, good for you, because that's true, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that. There was something that I read.
Would AJ be Rodman?
Would he be what?
Rodman.
Oh, he'd totally be Rodman because he has the different color hairs, the tattoos, the piercings, and he was like Rodman was the rebound guy, right? Mm. Yeah, I think so. I could also say that if I had to pick one of them to go to North Korea to talk to Kim Jong-il, it would be AJ. So I stand by that. Yeah.
So maybe, so Brian is Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Who is it? Nick is Scottie Pippen.
AJ is Rodman. Can I say that Kevin is Phil Jackson?
Sure. And then
Kevin's Phil Jackson.
Yeah, and then Howie is Benny the Bull.
Oh my god, I could totally see that. Howie is Benny the Bull. Yes. Good one. Not Tony Kukoc?
No, he's Benny.
You're like, for sure he's Benny all the way. Good times.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to be the end of this, but let me tell you, I wrote it down.
Okay.
So I'm going to marry Howie.
Oh, wait, but I was going to guess.
Oh, okay.
I can still guess. Okay. I knew that you were going to marry Howie, so I said that. Okay, you're going to marry Howie. This was out of AJ and Nick, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to marry Howie. You're going to bone Nick, and you're going to you're going to bone AJ, and you're going to kill Nick.
Yep.
I called it.
You did.
So predictable.
Yeah. And then Kevin and Brian will help me bury the body.
You know what, Brian? Apparently Brian would help you bury Nick's body because apparently there's some resentment between the two of them that none of us knew about. Yeah. So there. Any final thoughts before we finish up on the documentary? What was your favorite part was them fighting?
Yes.
You did really love that.
I did.
I'm trying to think of. Okay, so you were the most surprised by Nick.
Yep.
Okay. And then I guess, okay, I'm trying to think of any other final questions I have for you on this because I feel like I have more questions for you than you do for me. Backstory real quick.
Yeah.
You know how Nick talked about when he was having that argument, and he was saying that he had to pay. Oh, okay. I liked the analogy that Brian said of I need to do this for me, just like you need to do alcoholism for you, AJ, and you need to work on, whatever, Nick. So, Nick had a book out a few years ago. And in the book, he was talking about how when he was doing drugs, that he would show up, he'd be notoriously late to all the Backstreet Boy recordings for their last albums, not the two albums where Kevin wasn't in. And he would show up notoriously late. So they would dock him thousands of dollars for every minute that he was late, because that's how bad he was. Wow. So when he was talking about that and his resentments with that, that's what he was referring to in the conference room fight.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, well, yeah, so thank you for listening. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, listen to us on SoundCloud. Yeah, what's the next episode going to be?
So, Jacob was very adamant about wanting to do a Halloween episode, so I think that the next one should be the Halloween episode. What do you think?
Halloween episode in early October?
Yes. It sounded kind of judgy the way that you said that, though.
Yes, it was supposed to.
Okay. Well, then we won't do the Halloween episode.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll do the... maybe we'll actually do the Kevin episode next.
We could do a Kevin episode next. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
All right. Kevin episode next. Disregard everything else we've said.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my god, we're definitely editing that out.
We are.
That is horrible. That was so bad.
I know, we're editing that out for sure.
Okay, yeah, for sure.